So the Steelers offseason or the dead period of the NFL offseason lasted like a week or two. That's it.
Yeah.
It was maybe a week. I mean, I know like in May or June or something like that, there'll be some dead period or something like that. But really, we're talking 20. There's no real dead period. We're talking football all season long, all year long. I love it.
Well,
So go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, and I think you picked a great day to do the podcast today because as we're doing this, the franchise tag deadline is coming up here. And, one of the guys you and I have been talking about for a while, Lamar Jackson got franchise tagged in Baltimore, and I don't think that's going to go over well at all. So that just came down like about an hour ago. So
Yeah.
uh, it's going to be interesting because there's a couple guys out there that one I believe you brought up the last time we talked, Joe. Orlando Brown Jr. from Kansas City did not get the tag, so he's out there. But if we're about to see how good Omar Khan is, because if Omar Khan can bring Orlando Brown Jr. here at a 22.4 million hit,
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how he could work it, but I think everybody would love it.
That would be
Um,
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, but I think more realistically, a guy I really like and I think fits the system is Ben Powers from the Ravens. I was surprised they didn't get a deal done with him. He's a left guard, and let's be honest, Dotson beat out Kendrick Green, who pretty good chance you and I could have beat out Kendrick Green. And Dotson had 15 penalties and allowed 4 sacks last year. Ben Powers gave up one penalty all last year, 0 sacks. His price tag's much more affordable. I'd be ecstatic if the Steelers were able to bring Ben Powers from the Ravens here.
Interesting. I wonder if they will do any free agent moves with offensive linemen. That would be interesting. I know. I mean that my question was going to be what's their biggest need, and I think upgrading the offensive line is such a big need. I think they're okay with Mason Cole at center and with Daniels at right guard. But other than that, you could upgrade from Chooks at right tackle and Dotson at left guard and definitely Dan Moore at left tackle. You get way better than that. So
You could. And I think it's got to be like talking like we're talking now. I mean, they got to be sitting there looking at draft board saying, well, who do we think we can get in the draft? But I think a lot of times Kenny Pickett changes the whole thing too, right? You have a guy that's second year quarterback. You got to protect him. Do you really want to protect him with a bunch of rookies, right? So maybe you get a guy in the draft, yeah, for depth. But I think if we know the Steelers are never big players in the free agency, they'll make a player or two here. But Ben Powers is the kind of guy that would be a big move. I think the Steelers, if they're going to contact or try to go after somebody, it's got to be what you and I've talked about in this podcast for a couple of weeks now: defensive line or offensive line. Ben Powers is the guy I think they could go get.
interesting. Yeah, they have to upgrade. They have to do something in the defensive line. They have to do something in the offensive line, and they also have to do something at inside linebacker. So and at safety if they don't bring back Terrell Edmonds. So and
Right.
and cornerback if they don't bring back Cam Sutton, even if they do. Um,
Yeah, that's probably got to be one of the biggest ones, Joe, is what's going to happen with Cam Sutton because nothing happens by the draft. Then Joey Porter Jr. comes into the mix because we've talked about that. I still think we got to do that, draft party at Joey's house. But JPJ he ran a pretty good 40 on Sunday at the combine. He's got to be a guy that's on their list. I mean, he might be a guy on their list even if they keep Cam Sutton, Joe.
oh yeah,
And but yeah, it's interesting to see what they do with safety. But I think this is why you'd hope to make somewhat of a splash here a little bit before the draft, so they at least know what they have and what they haven't got. And another guy too is Puna Ford out of the Seattle Seahawks. Here's a guy, $9 million cap hit, very affordable for the Steelers to go get. 27 years old. He had 128 tackles last year, 8 sacks, 36 QB pressures. That's a guy that would really fit well on our defensive line. And if you ask me for a dark horse, Leighton Vander Esch doesn't look like him and the Cowboys are going to get a deal done. He's on a 1-year deal for $2 million. He can play middle linebacker and inside linebacker, and they need linebacker depth. Now he's 27 years old. He's coming off the best year of his career, in a 1 year, $2 million deal. I mean, those are guys where I always say that Penguins fans always got that. As Pittsburgh, we get spoiled. Like the Penguins spoiled it for everybody. They went out and got all these big names all those years. And what did it do, Joe? Not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Hossa. We can go right down the line.
Jerome and Ginla. Yeah.
Remember Iginla? I mean, I was like, they had to peel me off the ceiling when we drafted Jerome Iginla.
Yeah.
I was like, we're winning the cup.
Well, yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. We won the cup, and then what happened? Yeah.
No. So like Orlando Brown Jr. Yeah, but I mean, he's so going to cost us so much money. So yeah, I mean, if they can pick up a few of those guys, and then you're looking at the draft, right? So then where do we pick and choose and add depth to that draft? But they need a couple kids, and I really think that maybe some of those defensive backs. Don't forget, our special teams was lousy last year. Kicker's fine, but we need a new punter. You can get that. You can dress that probably somehow. You don't have to draft a punter. God help us if we draft a punter.
Yeah,
we've done it before. But I mean, just some better tackling on special teams too. So that's where you can pick up some of those guys in the later rounds that maybe might help add to that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of holes for the Steelers to fill.
A lot of holes, and this is really the first off season for Omar Khan, so we'll see how differently he does things. Basically, with Colbert's, they would try to fill all of their needs like through free agency or something like that, and then in the draft, just hopefully, just draft for depth or something like that, or whatever, but already have a starter in place. So we'll see what Omar Khan does.
Yeah, that might be the most interesting thing because A, you got to see what he does. Then B, maybe a year from now, we're sitting here saying, well, how did he do? Because really you can't, give him too much of a grade anytime in the next couple of months.
Right.
Maybe by week 8, we're looking and saying, hey, what he did last spring, it's working or it's not working. But yeah, a lot of pressure on him. And that's, again, when you're looking at it from Omar Khan's perspective, does he feel pressure like, okay, I'm the new GM. This is my first time. We're going to go out and get Orlando Brown, figure out how to do it, make that big splash that we're not used to seeing? Or, like I said, does he kind of pick and choose and, punch and move a little bit with some of these other guys that are a little bit lower on the scale, but good quality players?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've heard it said that there was no way that Colbert would have made that Chase Claypool trade. No. And we saw how well that worked out. So, hey, that's cool. Maybe, somebody new trying new things, different things. That's perfect. I also wonder how the draft is going to go when you have pick 17, 32, I think 49 and something else for 80 something. Yeah, something like that. Maybe I don't know about trading up, but trading back might be an option. Go back a few spots and get an extra draft pick or something. I don't know.
It could be really interesting. I mean, you're already seeing a couple of teams already saying that they're going to do this, and they was it the Bears that are willing to like trade a couple things away to give away the first pick, and I don't know, which I find comical because the Bears must be really bad. I mean, bad. They took Chase Claypool, and you have Fields saying that he doesn't want to really play there anymore, or unless they build a dome. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me,
bro. There's no dome in Chicago. Go on, man.
No dome in Chicago. Just the Bears are in just a bad way. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. I think another thing, Joe, they got to figure out a way to sign Alex Highsmith. That's a guy. I don't like the Bud Dupree comparisons we've.
Yeah, what is that?
I think it's just the state of it. Like, well, Dupree was a linebacker, and he had that one great season. And the Steelers have, despite what anyone would say about Tom Colbert, he has made a lot of deals over the years where he let guys go that some people thought he should have kept, and he was right, and fans were wrong. Bud Dupree being a big one. But I think Highsmith keeps on showing each year. He keeps improving. And he's a guy I definitely think you'd like to bring back. We don't have the ability to lose a guy like that at linebacker.
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta sign him. I just thought it was really curious that Bud Dupree got released by Tennessee. People were like, bring him back.
No, no.
Okay, but how's that gonna work? As
He
a
had a he
backup,
had one great
maybe?
senior year at Kentucky, which is why everyone got on him and drafted him. He ran a great combine. Then when he got the money, he was like, okay, I got it, I'm done. Then in Steelers, he stunk. He's like, oh, wait, it's a contract year. I better play well. So
It took him 5 years to be good. I mean, come
yeah,
on.
yeah, there's
He
a
had four
pattern.
crappy years and one good year, and he cashed in. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, the dude only shows up when he's about to get paid. Like, okay,
right.
good for you, but
Yeah,
I mean, hey, and then okay, hey, if you want to come in for some really low deal and be a backup, cool. He'd be an ideal backup. But
yeah,
other than that, no, I want Highsmith. Highsmith looked really good last year.
yeah. That's why there's teams out there. Like I was a little bit surprised the Cowboys didn't do anything with Leighton Vander Esch. A good talent, affordable guy, and they don't have the linebacker depth. He's either after Mika Parsons. So, yeah, go get a guy like that. Let the Cowboys sign Bud Dupree. They can have him. but
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, it's just now's the fun time for me. Like watching what they're gonna say, looking at the combine scores because I still feel like the combine says a lot, but it also can overstate what you can and can't do. One guy that had a pretty bad combine was wide receiver Kayshon Butte, which that's a fun name to say. He did terrible with the combine, but I mean, if Steelers were able to grab him in a later round, like the third or fourth round, the upside of him is just tremendous. He had Jamar Chase numbers at LSU, and without a great quarterback there, so he's a guy that's interesting. Parker Washington, the kid out of Penn State, another kid that's kind of hanging loose there, and he's a guy you can't draft him as a split end. He's a slot guy completely, but I feel like a guy like that might be a perfect fit for a guy like Kenny Pickett because who's a young quarterback looking for? He's looking for that slot guy. I like my slot guy, and Parker Washington's a phenomenal slot receiver. It's all he could ever be. That could be a good marriage. And then the defensive lineman out of Pitt, he's having a tremendous combine. His draft stock's rising. I mean, I could see the Steelers taking a shot at him too. And he had a great junior year at Pitt.
They're comparing him to Aaron Donald. Uh-oh.
Well, again, right here we go. Is he quite Aaron Donald? No. I guess we'd be too cocky or arrogant to say there's no way. You never want to say no way, at least not yet. But yeah, I mean,
You never know.
he does have what the Steelers are missing at the defensive line. His first one or two steps, I mean, holy crap, he's like a receiver coming off the line. He's so quick. He's going to draw penalties and everything. It's just, again, he's kind of a late bloomer. So we'll see what the Steelers do. We're probably at fault because, right, we watch these things. The draft is such a big deal. Now they have parties in cities. By the way, they got to get it here in Pittsburgh because we're going to go. I mean, that's just going to be too much fun.
That would be fun.
Oh, God, yeah. But it's like everybody put so much stock into this when so many years ago, nobody even cared. It's like the draft was on ESPN and ESPN2. Now it's this massive production, and yeah, I think everybody buys into it. And as a player, you can just kill yourself, or be the new hero after just one good combine.
I loved those days when it was just it was all on, like, I think every round was on a Saturday. Maybe it was
Yeah.
like, maybe the later rounds were on a Sunday or something like that. That was so much fun. Those were the best days. I remember that. Like, it started at like noon. It was, oh man, that was so much fun.
I tell my wife, I'd be like, that day, just don't, that's going to be me, a bag of chips, going to order a pizza, just
Oh,
watch where these guys
many
go.
memories, so many
Yeah.
memories of those.
Yeah.
Oh, those were the most fun. It always seemed like it was like rainy or crappy weather outside too on those Saturdays in April.
Oh, I
So
know. Yeah. And you're always like, there's the local kid that, like I remember Larry Fitzgerald being out there, and I still to this day feel Larry Fitzgerald got robbed of the Heisman. He should have won it. I think
that still bugs me.
him and Randy Moss are the two best collegiate receivers I ever saw. Keyshawn Johnson's up there too, but I think he's behind those two. It's like, man, could you imagine Keyshawn Johnson with the Steelers? But at the time, they really didn't have a need for Keyshawn or for Larry Fitz. But oh my God,
Um,
yeah,
the he was either the Pittsburgh Press or the Post Gazette would have a 2 pages in their sports section of like every draft prospect and like a little blurb about them. So it's like, oh, I don't know who this is. It's like, oh, let me go. Oh, that's the third ranked defensive lineman or whatever. It's like, oh my, oh, it was so much fun. Those are the days. That was so much fun.
yeah.
And
And
yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't care about. You know, I get it. It's a spectacle now, but at least do more than the first round on one night, on one day or something.
yeah, I know. I'm so much more. I'm like, wait a minute, no more, no, get 2 or 3 rounds in. No, yeah,
Yeah. This is but it actually is going to really work in the Steelers' favor because they have that 32nd pick, which is the first pick of the second round. So after all the pomp and circumstance of the first round, teams will go back and they'll say, "Oh my God, so and so still available. Let me talk to the Steelers to see if we could do a trade and something like that." So maybe the Steelers can really get something, at least move back a little bit on that second round pick and get something really good, or get some extra picks or something like that. So they're in a really good position.
I believe the last time they were able to draft this high in the second round, they drafted maybe a Ziggy Hood. I can't remember. But it's like, yeah, I agree with you, Joe. Because every time you look at page 2 on day 2, it's like, man, the Steelers are picking for like 30 more picks or
Right,
40 more
right.
picks, or they don't even have a pick. So it's like
I'd really like him, but he's not going to be there. He's
right.
he's not going to be there.
And I
Yeah.
think you're right. That's a really great point because it's like you're in a catbird seat. You're like, okay, here's what everybody did the first day. Here's some guys that we didn't think would be around that are around. I mean, it's and then like you said, you get the Chiefs or the Seahawks or somebody calling you saying, hey, we'll give you blah 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 blah, and it's just it's a lot of fun. It's almost more fun than the first round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows how it's all going to go down. So, oh, yeah, and I think free agency really starts next week. So,
Yeah,
we're just all in the middle of it.
it's almost like I'm just waiting for the podcast we do to follow up and see what we did or didn't do. But I'm hoping that like we can do something. And yeah, it's there's a lot of guys out there, but those are the guys that I would like. That Ben Powers, Puna Ford, those are guys. In Leighton Vander Esch. I mean, any one of those three, I'd be over the moon.
They also have to decide what to do with Miles Jack.
They do.
And he is making his cap hit this year is 11.2 million, and I think he's on the last year of his deal. They gotta decide whether they want him or not, and if they do want him, maybe extend him or something. Because I mean, he can't be making that much. I'm sorry, no,
No, and
especially
I think
especially with the year he had.
if they were to pull and draft a guy like Leighton Vander Esch, it would be after determining what they're going to do with him. Miles Jack, but Miles Jack quietly had a great year last year. There was a good part of the year he was leading the league in tackles. So he had a great year, and it was kind of nice because how many years in Jacksonville did he eat our lunch? I mean, he killed us a couple times when he played for Jacksonville. So, I agree with you. If they sign him, I'm happy with that. A reasonable price, and that keeps up that depth. But I think that's what they got to look at. Like, hey, we signed Miles Jack, we signed Highsmith, and of course we have T.J. Watt. So at least the linebacker has some depth to it. But you're right, that inside linebacker spot is just glaringly obvious. They need help there. This draft for linebackers is not great. It's okay. Once you get past the first 5 to 6 guys, it's pretty weak. Where there's a lot of good safeties and a lot of good cornerbacks out there. It's a very good draft for defensive backs. So be really interesting to see if they take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah. It almost seems like the way they talk, it's Joey Porter Jr. or bust. Just because, like, the way they talk about him, it's like he grew up in the organization. He was running around as a little kid when Joey Porter was a player. He was always hanging around when, then Joey Porter became a coach. It's like they all already know him and would love, that's just a great story, would love to have him be with them now.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
perfectly okay with that.
I am too, and obviously, we're Pittsburghers. You know how it goes. He had a great, outstanding junior year with Penn State, and that's what got him on everybody's radar. And of course, he's Joey Porter's kid. Um, but the nice thing about JPJ is he's had very good years. But I was been telling a lot of my friends, like, we need a backup plan though, because like, everyone's gonna be like, if he goes early, everyone's gonna be like, no, we didn't get Joey Porter Jr. Now what do we do? Well, there's
Yeah.
another good linebacker in the Big Ten out of Illinois, Witherspoon. I mean, he's really good. In a lot of ways, he's probably better than JPJ, but it's the name thing, it's the bloodline, right? I mean, that kid almost single-handedly beat Michigan for Illinois. So it's not like if we don't get JPJ that the world's coming to an end, but it'll take a while for the Steelers to get over it. But it seems like all the Steel fans, that's who they want. Even the
That
Pitt fans, like, we'll take him.
Yeah, yeah, we're perfectly. I don't care that he's a Penn State guy.
Right?
We got Fryermuth, and hey,
Yeah.
Pickett's okay with Fryermuth. So if a Pitt guy can throw to a Penn State guy, maybe there's chance for peace in the world. But what just stinks about the draft is you fall in love with someone.
Right.
You was like, oh my God, I want him so bad. I want this guy. And then you don't get him. And it's like, oh, I'm heartbroken. So
Yeah.
that's just the thing that stings. So it's just hard getting fixated on one player. And yeah, who knows? I mean, basically, who is that guy? That other cornerback,
From Illinois.
Gonzalez? No, maybe it was good. There's another quarterback that like early on was thought to go to the Steelers, but like I think now he's going to go like top 10 or something like that. So you never know. You never know if a team like really wants a cornerback and says, oh,
Yep.
okay, well this one's gone. And because I think Joey Porter Jr. is considered like the second best cornerback prospect. So
He is. He is. I mean, the other kid he had like 6 picks this year. I mean, he had an outstanding senior year, and that's probably what put him over the edge. And he was on a lot. Illinois was a good team this year. They won a lot of nationally televised games. They gave Ohio State a good game. They nearly beat Michigan. Probably should have beat Michigan. So when you again, people watching, right? That draft stock went flying high on him this year. So and the other thing is, for anybody else watching these podcasts, and I'm not trying to compare us to other cities, Pittsburgh has what I always call with the draft, the Dan Marino syndrome. We'll never get over the fact that we didn't draft a local kid. I mean, the Rooneys didn't get over it. Dan Rooney always said he regretted it. You regret it. I regret it. All of Pitt Nation really regrets it. Because we always say, what would have happened if we would have had Dan Marino? I mean, I easily think we have another Super Bowl in there. Maybe at least go to a few. We definitely probably win one or two with him there. And I don't think we've ever gotten over that. At least my generation and your generation, as long as we're alive, it's always going to be that local kid, that Aaron Donald, the Joey Porter Jr. We're always going to have, that will and want and desire to. If there's a good local kid, we want him. Don't do what we did to Dan Marino.
yeah, I lived through those 80s teams. They really could have used the Dan Marino.
Yeah.
just oh man, poor Mark Malone.
Oh,
Poor Mark Malone. He's like one of the most hated guys in Pittsburgh sports history just for being there. He was okay. He just wasn't Terry Bradshaw and people were mad.
yeah. And that's how I first remember the draft too, because I remember my dad sitting there reading the paper. Are you kidding me? Why wouldn't they draft Marino? Because it's just because back then the NFL draft was hardly a thing. We didn't have cable, so we didn't see it live. Like, ESPN carried it from its inception, but we didn't see it live. We didn't see it until the 6 o'clock news and then the draft the next day. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan Marino is the reason that, wow, Dan Marino changed my life. I never thought about that. Dan Marino is the reason why I fell in love with Pitt. And
Yeah.
that's why when I graduated from high school, I'm like, I didn't even look at any other schools. Like, I gotta go to Pitt. I just fell in love with Pitt because of Dan Marino. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the thing with Lamar Jackson just is fascinating.
Really
I'd
is.
say there's a 50% or at least higher chance that he doesn't end up on the Ravens this year. And that's insane. What are they? As a Steelers fan, I'm thrilled. Good,
Yeah.
good, good. More turmoil for the Ravens. Good. What
Good.
are
Yeah.
they going to do if they don't have Lamar Jackson? There's like, what, Andy Dalton or something? Like, what are they going to
Yeah.
do?
Oh, what was the kid that was a third string kid that ended up making the Pro Bowl?
Huntley. Yeah.
Huntley. Like what? Like I mean, if you didn't totally not respect the Pro Bowl anymore, that was the
Yeah,
icing.
that was the dumbest thing ever.
So
Mason Rudolph should have made the Pro Bowl over that guy.
yeah, I mean, you're right. It does bring a lot of turmoil. I mean, remember last year we were sitting here talking how like that was turmoil. The Browns had turmoil with Watson, and we're just sitting back kind of loving it. And you saw what it did to the Browns. That Browns team is much better than what their record is. I mean, that's a good Browns team. And I mean, I say Chubb arguably still maybe the best back in the NFL right now. And they just can't keep their stuff together. And they finally have the players. And in the Watson thing, I think ate him up. It definitely ate up the front office. It definitely affected the coaching staff. And I think you might see the same thing with the Ravens, Joe. I mean, I know the Ravens have been fairly competitive every year. You might see them take a step back. They might be the Browns of next year, where Lamar doesn't report, he does report, he holds out, whatever. Yeah,
He is his own agent, or his mom is his agent, or something like that.
I think so. Yeah,
And that is just a really bad idea. I get it. You want to save money, but you do not want to be in contract negotiations. Basically, it's the other team's job to say every bad thing about you possible to try to get you to pay less. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear all terrible things about me. That's what the agent is for. To let the agent, fight for you or whatever. Man, I don't blame Lamar Jackson. And I know, and this is funny. You mentioned Deshaun Watson. This is all Deshaun Watson's fault because they gave him a fully guaranteed contract. So Lamar Jackson's like, well, I'm as good as him and I
oh
don't
yeah,
get into any off the field trouble. So give me a fully guaranteed contract. And the Ravens are like, no, you're hurt all the time and you're gonna wear down with your style. So no, we don't want to do that, and that's probably the problem. And now I guess what is it? It wasn't the exclusive tag. It was a tag where he can negotiate with other teams
yeah,
in this in the Ravens could maybe match it, but if they
matching
don't
offer.
match
Yeah,
it,
it's
they
it's
get
like a
two
trouble
first round
tag.
draft picks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like be like the Raiders. At least they tied up Josh Jacobs on the franchise tag, and Josh Jacobs again kind of quietly had a hell of a year last year, and probably now is going to try and have the best year or two he can to be a big draft free agent in another year or two. But yeah, you're right. It's a tag that's going to welcome a lot of just a lot of bad will, I think. And then it's not going well there. It's going to escape me. The receiver who I love, even though he's a Raven, Robert, can't think of his name.
Rashad Bateman.
Rashard Bateman. He had it out with the GM this week because the GM said, "Well, we've never drafted. He kind of admitted we have not been able to draft a Pro Bowl talent, a top tier wide receiver." Well, Rashard Bateman took offense to that because he had a decent year. He had even a better year last year, and he's not happy. He took great offense to that, and it's just
First
yeah,
of all, GM of the Ravens, you're just ripping on yourself. It's like, well, we didn't really, you really draft good wide receivers. Who drafted those people? Aren't you?
you
You're ripping on yourself there, dude.
right.
Second of all, if I'm that wide receiver, I'm saying the same thing. I'm like, screw you. Who are you to badmouth us? Like
Yeah, he's the
you're
only
the
one that
one that
spoke
did
up.
this.
Yeah, he's the only one that spoke up. The other guys can't be happy either. So I mean, I think they're in a little bit of trouble there in Baltimore, which is fine by me, and everybody else that bleeds black and gold.
It's just,
So
yeah, it's just weird. You think of them as such a good, stable organization. They're almost just like the Steelers, and they are just all kinds of turmoil, and it's crazy.
well, and that's right. That's just it. That's a great point. I mean, what makes you hate the Ravens? Because they're run pretty well. I mean, they've won a couple Super Bowls. They've been there. It's been us and them. And now, the Bengals are that kind of new kid on the block in a way. The Browns just haven't been able to get there. Nobody still respects the Browns. So but yeah, I mean, especially after last year. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see some chinks in the armor in the Baltimore organization right now. Where again, I think this is why we've talked about this on the last couple of podcasts. This is a huge, huge offseason and draft for the Steelers. Probably the most important in 5 to 10 years. They got to get it right. They need to get it right in free agency and need to get it right in the draft because there are things in place. Kenny Pickett, the defense. They have George Pickens. They have the right people in place. So we got a great running back. It seems like the promise is there, but there's some things that need to be done, some holes that need plugged, and that's why they want to stay steady, have good relations between the GM and the players, and really make the most of this year, probably next year a little bit too. But this is a huge, huge offseason for us.
They are one good offseason from not only making the playoffs, but being, I mean, obviously it's like Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati. But then other than that, maybe being the fourth best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
Hey, and then who knows what happens if you make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
but like you said, that's a big if. You gotta hit. You gotta hit on those draft picks and you gotta hit on those free agents. And if you do, everybody stays healthy, you got something possibly something special. Possibly if Kenny Pickett can make that jump. And maybe they take the reins off him a little bit, and maybe, Matt Canada gets a brain. Maybe this could be like a pretty good team. Talking maybe 11, 12 wins, something like that.
I think you're right. I think that's definitely within reach. Was that you tweeted like a week or two ago, give me 2 words that would ruin your day, and I said Matt Canada.
That's about it.
I couldn't resist. But no, you're right. I mean, because you look at there's a lot of teams out there giving you an example of what not to do. I mean, look at the Packers. I mean, they should have won more Super Bowls with Aaron Rodgers than they did. I mean, they have failed mercilessly to get that guy what he needs time and time again. What was the one I saw this year? Like they could have had T. Higgins, and they drafted that kid, the quarterback, with the create all the chaos there. It was Lovejoy or whatever his last name is. I mean, you could have T. Higgins, who's one of the best receivers in football. He's probably the best high pointing receiver in the league, and he's on a great team with the Bengals, and it makes the Bengals a very tough team to defend against with those 2 great wide receivers that they have and a great quarterback and a developing line. So, yeah, I mean, God, you can just not do well at all.
And then they're it looks like they're about to trade Aaron Rodgers, maybe to the Jets, and that's gonna be huge. And then maybe hope that this Jordan Love is okay.
Yeah, we'll yeah. Remember we drafted Jordan Love like 4 years ago? We're gonna try him now and see if that works. And I mean, my gosh.
That's the thing. That's the thing. The Packers never take a chance. They never, like, if they traded for Diggs or DeAndre Hopkins or something like that, they got 1 or 2 more Super Bowls. They never gave Aaron Rodgers that help. Basically, they said to Aaron Rodgers, well, we'll draft some wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th round, and good luck with that. Maybe he'll be okay. Yeah. Oh, well, we wish you luck.
Yeah, or the defense. I mean, they just kind of let it lapse, and it kind of reminds me of how the Steelers kind of have let the offensive line lapse. We just, I guess, assumed that, we were going to have guys. Yeah, you thought Castro was going to be there for 30 years. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I mean, it was obviously they were starting to wear down a little bit, and I always felt too that I wonder if I know they always play the card that Munchak wanted to get back to family and everything, but I wonder if Munchak was saying these guys are starting to decline a little bit. we need to address offensive lineman in the first round, and maybe he wasn't heard. I don't know that factually, so I'm not going to say it. I think there's other Steelers fans that are, oh, nobody listens. It's Tomlin runs it like, Nazi Germany. I don't think that's the case, but or Tom Colbert did. You just got to wonder. So I mean, I'm not trying to pick on the Packers because the Steelers haven't done well. I always point out we picked that quarterback last year in the Bears, who we just knocked 10 minutes ago, drafted that offensive tackle in the 7th round, who ended up being an all rookie, who ended up starting every game for the Bears, who ended up being a really good tackle for the Bears. And we drafted a quarterback that we ended up cutting. Like,
Yeah.
how did we knew we've had offensive line issues for the better part of 3 or 4 years? How did you not pick that kid? How did you not see that?
Now they have, with this Andy Weidel, who came from the Eagles, they have a guy who supposedly really emphasizes the offensive and defensive line. So we'll see how this draft goes. Maybe they'll draft multiple offensive linemen. Maybe it'll just be all like offensive and defensive linemen. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think what is that, about a month and a half from now, I think we're going to be sitting there. I really think it's going to go either cornerback or defensive line. I think that's where it's going. I could be wrong, but I mean, I just can't imagine that unless they go out and get a bunch of free agents. I can't see how those are two positions they don't address and add to. And you might be right, and a dark horse might be that an inside linebacker, because everybody knows that their depth is just so shot there, and they need help. So
another thing they need to do is, we just talked about neglecting a position. They need to start thinking about replacing Cam Hayward. Hayward is awesome, and he's still awesome, but he's been playing for 13 years now.
Right.
It's time to start. It's time to wean him off. He can still be good, but maybe, don't rely on the guy that's been playing a million years to be playing well.
And that's what I'm saying. It's not like I'm narking on like the Castro, but like, it's not that you have to replace him right now because he's worn down. He's getting there. So you want to replace him now. So when he does get there and he's ready to walk away, he's ready to retire, then you have a kid in place. Don't wait until he's done and then get the replacement.
Yeah.
Because Cam Hayward's pretty much the leader on the team now. The entire team. He's the captain. And I mean, if you bring in a kid like Puna Ford, or you get a defensive lineman in the draft, what better teacher to have for at least how much time we have left with him, maybe a year or two, than Cam Hayward. So I think those are things that they got to be thinking about. I would hope. I mean, if you and I are thinking about it, you'd hope that they are. So,
No, you're right. It's the perfect scenario. While he's still there, have him teach his replacements. Right. Perfect. It's a perfect scenario. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't remember them grabbing a good free agent offensive lineman. I think you have to go back to Flozo Adams, Flozo Hotel. I mean, he was a great pickup. So you'd hope that, again, I love Ben Powers, left guard. I like Dotson. He's okay, but I have no problem with Dotson being a backup.
Yeah, I have no problem with Dotson being a backup, and Moore. I think Moore is a great backup.
That's where he belongs.
It's where he belongs. Say, hey, if you need him for a few plays, that's cool. That's who you want.
Great. Yeah.
Not every snap, that's for sure.
Yeah, he can sign. He can be one of the guys that the Steelers bring in the Dicks to sign that you never heard of, and yeah.
All right, really exciting. It's going to be exciting to see what happens with free agency, and then after all that free agent stuff happens, then we really get into draft talk. So
I'd like to see where we are in the next 2 to 3 weeks, Joe. I think you hit the nail on the head on that. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. The other interesting thing is, as of now, there's no cap space, but we know that doesn't mean anything. There's a million things they could do to free up. I think I heard that when it's all said and done, they'll have about $30 million in cap space once they restructure contracts and get rid of people. That William Jackson schmuck's making $14 million or something like that. So
what was Devin Bush making? I forget.
He was. What was his deal? Did they bring him back, or was that the last year of his deal?
Okay, you're right. I think it was the last year. So that's going to be interesting too, because I want to see who I'm going to laugh at when he goes. So, sorry, Devin Bush, not to pick on you, dude, but again, there's a classic
Oh
case.
no, he deserves all of that.
Yeah,
He was Devin Bush was
moved up.
making $6 million last year.
Yeah. So, yep. Yeah. So I think, I think what they'll do is they'll use some of that money to help get Alex Highsmith signed, hopefully here soon.
Yeah. You got to sign Alex Highsmith, so that's going to take up some of the cap, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So we'll see. It's exciting. All right.
It really is.
The dead period that lasted a few days is over now, and now we're talking football again. I love it.
Me too. Me too. It's gonna be fun to see how that rolls right into the draft in April.
Yes. All right. Hey, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Joe. Have a good evening.
You too.